Welcome to Harmony and Hustle, the Power Couple podcast. I'm Sabrina Reynolds, and this is my amazing husband and business partner, Lou Reynolds. All right, Lou, what's on the table today?
Sabrina, today's table talk is about leaving balance behind. And as we think about that, there's a lot that we need to consider, but there's a few things that I think we can talk about as it relates to balance.
Okay, so tell me, why are we leaving balance behind? What's that all about?
So I personally have heard the terminology balance quite a bit, to the point where I think it's pretty played out. If you think about how many times people say, you need more balance in your life.
Work-life balance.
Get that work-life balance going.
Balance.
You're just out of balance. That's really what's going on.
I get what they mean, what they're trying to say.
Sure.
But it just feels a little like perfectionism.
Yeah. And two, when people are in the midst of working through situations and circumstances that they're going through, and you tell them, oh, you're just out of balance, that doesn't feel too good. You make people start wondering, so what exactly do you want me to cut out of my life? Or who should I be cutting out of my life that's taking up too much and putting me out of balance in my life? So I guess really that's ultimately why I want to address this topic, and why we're going to, by the end of this, hopefully be able to leave balance behind.
All right. Tell us, math guy.
So people quite often think about balance, and I can say that for me from a mathematical perspective, that it means equal parts of all things, right? And keeping everything totally aligned in terms of its quantity that you're dealing with of each thing. But that's not what life is. And so the best example I could give of that is work, right? So you go to work, you have a job, but when you signed your contract or, you got hired by that company, did they tell you that they were offering you a work-life balance or a balanced lifestyle where you were going to get an equal amount of vacation time to your work time so you could keep it all in balance?
Yeah, no.
Pretty sure not.
That does not exist.
No, I have not seen that. If it's out there, tell me about it.
You're not getting to work half the year and getting paid vacation half the year.
Not familiar with that concept. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be a new concept though, and I'm certainly open to hearing if it's available. So let me know. But that said, so when we think about balance, then what are we saying? And really, that's where we started really utilizing the term having the right rhythm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And rhythm is everything in terms of, it's not about being perfect. It's not about, hey, I have to have an equal amount of this to equal out with how much I have of that, especially if you have other things that demand your attention in life outside of just your job or your career or your business. You got other things like a wife, for example.
You're welcome.
Like children.
Yeah. Or like a mom that you're caring for.
Yeah. All of these things demand our attention, and they have to have time that's invested into them in order for those things to function and work correctly. Whether it's the relationship or the business, it has to be done right. But we've learned that right is not balanced. So even if it's where I'm thinking, oh, I want to spend some time with one of my children. So if I'm going to spend time with my son, that doesn't mean that I've said, I'm done with my daughter. I don't have time for you. We're just going to be out of balance, and I'm sorry, you fell off. I tried to balance this thing and something had to go and I chose you. That's not what this is. And that's why I want to talk about the concept of rhythms. Tell us a little bit about rhythm, Sabrina.
Okay. Well, I like music. I like music a lot. We both like music. And there are different tempos to different songs. And I think that is a big thing that we've had to learn, that life is going to throw us different curveballs. It's like, how are we going to dance in this season? So we had children that were really small at one point, and we were running from basketball practices to cheerleading practice to this, to that, just trying to really figure out their schedule. We had, I think at that time, we had one business, but then we were also working full time. So we were just trying to manage all those different competing priorities. Then the season changed where my mom came to live with us. And we had to figure out what's this new dance? What's this new rhythm? Because this is a brand new song. We have never danced before, danced to before. What do we do with this? The biggest thing for me, I found like trying to create this perfect thing, like you said, having this perfect balance of time with each person. And it just wasn't working out. I was stressed out. I felt overworked. I was just really trying to dig into business and figure everything. And I burned out multiple times, burnt out. So in learning that each season has its own rhythm, that's really helped me to back away from perfection. I am a self-proclaimed recovering perfectionist, recovering workaholic, all those things. And in that perfectionism, you just really try to make everything right for everyone at all time. And it is exhausting. It is exhausting. I don't know how else to put it. That's how I wind up burning out, is trying to find this perfect balance instead of really understanding that the rhythm is going to be different in this season and being okay with it. And I think a big thing for me is I was trying to make our lives look like other people's lives. And I had to realize that that's not my song. I'm not supposed to be dancing to their rhythm. We got to figure out what's ours.
Yeah, that's so good because, your life within your circle is going to move at a specific tempo. And when you start looking at other people and identifying their rhythm and try to apply that to your life, that's not your life to live. You can't live their life. And so the rhythm at which they're moving to, like you said, that's completely different, most likely, than the rhythm at which your song for your family and your life is moving at. And so, I've just, myself discovered like with that concept. I love that analogy that Sabrina has, because when you think about it, I like all different kinds of songs, and some are faster, some are slower. It just depends on the song itself. But if I'm going to dance to that song, I can't be doing the same dance to one song that's a really fast-paced song and then do that same dance to the slow song when that comes on.
You look ridiculous.
It's pretty ridiculous. Pretty ridiculous. And thus, when I think about some of the seasons that we walk through within our family, if my daughter is at a time where she has need of me, she needs my time and my attention. We have 2 children. You may have already heard us say this, but our 2 children, our son is 25 and our daughter is 18. And so she's about to graduate from high school, and there are a lot of moving parts to that. And those things require our attention. And so if we're going to be like, you know what, I would love to talk to you about that college application, but I balance things out and you're out of time for this week. So sorry, I'm going to go spend time with your brother now so that we can keep everything balanced. That's crazy and ridiculous. And
absurd.
The rhythm is not going to be there. And so we want to understand what the rhythm is so that we can move with it, and the flow that we'll have, these things will come into harmony together as we transition through the different seasons, the different phases that our life is in. And it's not discarding anything or not giving priority to things. It's really understanding what's the priority in a moment so that I can move with that. And then when is it time to transition to that next thing?
Yeah. It just makes me think about, all of our experiences in life and just saying, man, we've had a lot of different song changes.
For sure.
A lot of different song changes in life. And, what does that really look like for us? So it kind of brings to mind the question, what do you think our rhythm looks like right now in our marriage and in life? Like, what kind of song would you apply to it? Would you say it's like smooth jazz or more like the drum line in a thunderstorm?
Yeah, right now, probably a little bit more of that drum line and thunderstorm. I'd be a little heavy metal to what we got going on right now. But again, because we are having those intimate conversations that even in this season when things are at a much faster pace, than that slow jam, we're going to be okay because we're transitioning and moving in harmony at this particular rhythm.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think we both can, okay, I should ask you, how do you feel about that? Would you agree, disagree?
Oh, no, I agree. It's drumline in a thunderstorm, baby. Yeah. We have a lot going on but it's a fast-paced rhythm. There's all kinds of things that could really distract us or just make us feel like, wait, this is chaos right now. But we can hear the beat, we can hear the rhythm. We're like, okay, we know that right now we're doing this fast thing. I don't think we've had a smooth jam or smooth jazz season in a little while. It's been a little while. People look at us and they're like, "You guys are what? What? Huh? You guys?" Yeah, we're doing that, but
Yeah.
we're not burning out like we used to when we had a whole lot less
So true.
in our lives that we were, doing or responsible for. Now it just feels like you said, we're in harmony. We're hearing the same song. We know where we are. We know what we got to do, and we're locking arms and we're doing it together.
You know what's interesting too about that is you make a great point. Like there was that season in our lives when we were doing so much less than we're doing now, and it was exhausting. It was like I don't even want to do this anymore. But that had so much to do with the rhythm that was going on at the time. We were not in harmony with that particular rhythm.
Nope.
And so that's another thing. Like you've got to really determine who are the dance partners that you have in your life, because the people that are dancing with you, if you guys are not in harmony and you're just moving to your own rhythm, like that makes for a really messy dance.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I see those situations.
Yeah. So would you say that we were dancing to our own rhythm during that
100%.
time? Yeah.
100%.
Like I was hearing one thing like, oh, wait, this is what we're supposed to be doing. I really feel like this is what we're supposed to be doing in the season. You're like, no.
Yeah, I'm like, slow it down.
I'm like, no, pick up the pace. Come on, Lou.
This is a slow dance. What are you doing? And when that happens, typically you're both, wearing each other out in the relationship.
Yeah.
And so that's why, sometimes we can get to a point of burnout, even though it was, way less than what we're doing now. We were burning each other out in that I'm like, I'm not trying to keep up with this pace that you've got going on. That's not how I feel the actual rhythm is right now. And you're like, let's go. Come on, get with it. And you're like, it is exhausting trying to drag you,
right,
along with this. And so what we have to do in those times is sometimes you got to pause the music.
Wow.
No, actually, let you think on that.
Think on that one. Sometimes you got to pause the music.
You got to pause it.
Tell me about that.
So pausing the music, what I just mean is if you're constantly on the go, whether it's at slow pace, fast pace, whatever your pace is, but the person or people that are inside of your intimate circle are moving to a very different rhythm. If you just let the music continue to play, you're just going to be off of what that beat is. So the pause for me is it's time to have some of those conversations that can be challenging.
Yeah.
Where you sit down and you talk about those things that, hey, we're not moving to the same rhythm here. We're completely out of harmony. How do we get back in harmony?
Okay, so let me ask you a question, because there are some times when I'm like, this is where we're supposed to be. Let's go. Let's move. Yeah. We're going to miss the opportunity. Let's jump on it. But you're like, no, let me pause and slow down. How do you get my attention when I'm go, 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 and you're trying to tell me, hey, let's slow down? How do you get my attention in those moments?
Yeah. So, we all have challenges and obstacles that we face. And for me, that particular challenge comes with am I willing to listen? So
What do you mean?
I'm constantly in those moments, like me of self wants to say, Sabrina, I need you to listen. And, I get into the mode of I'm not being heard, so I'm going to talk louder. Sometimes we're thinking like the other person really isn't hearing me. Maybe I'm not talking loud enough, right? It's just like your natural inclination is maybe I got to turn up the volume because I'm not getting the level of response that I'm anticipating I should be. So I go that route when actually the opposite is true. So in those moments, if I'll actually turn the volume down and I'll get quiet and listen, what it does is it allows you to understand that you've been heard. And there are all kinds of cues that I should be giving during that time to let you know and alert you to the fact that I am actively listening. I'm not just letting you talk. Hurry up. Cause confession, I've done that too. Right. Hurry up and say what you got to say so that I can say what I need to say. Let's go. Hurry up. Yeah. And so, in that mode, you're not feeling heard. In fact, you're probably feeling rushed, and that's not a good feeling. Yeah. And so, I have to be really intentional about when I'm having those conversations with you that I'm an active listener.
Yeah.
And once you feel heard, it's amazing how the dynamic shifts and you're like, okay, I've said what I need to say. What are you saying? What is it exactly that you're saying? And now I have my opportunity to really express where I'm coming from.
Yeah. And so you're a person that you shut down, right? Like if you're not being heard, you kind of just go radio silent, So for me, in order to make sure that I'm hearing you and, I've got to pause, like you said, slow down, and I've got to ask questions to pull the answer out of you, not to come across where I'm trying to fix you, which I've tried that. It doesn't work. But if I'm just asking those open-ended questions to really get a sense of how you're feeling in that moment, that then leads to deeper conversations that could really get an understanding. Because I feel like sometimes when you're feeling it, you really don't know how to express it or verbalize it. So I've got to take, some alternate routes to really understand what's really going on and how do I hear what he's actually saying. And and not listen to respond, but actually listen to listen and pull out the things that you're really trying to say.
Yeah, I think that listening to respond versus listening to understand, it's not just different on the surface. It looks completely different.
Yeah.
And so
your body language, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it becomes evident what that person is doing.
Yeah. I can tell when your mind is spinning and I'm like, hear what I'm saying.
Yeah. And likewise for me too. Like sometimes I'm talking and I'm like,
my eyes are glazing over.
I'm seeing them, and the nodding of the head that's telling me not that you agree with anything that I'm saying, but more so hurry up and finish what you're saying because I already have the answer for what you said. And
yes, that has been an issue. And I have apologized. I'm trying. I'm working on it. Okay. I have a short attention span, y'all. And I'm really trying to make sure that I'm focused and actively listening.
Yeah. And, this is not a knock on you or anyone else that, feels that way that, hey, I don't have the attention span to listen to, the entirety of what you have to say. I think that we all have practices that we have to adopt that help us to adapt.
Yeah, that's good because sometimes it becomes about my needs aren't being met, as opposed to how can I show that I care about more than getting my point across, but I care about what you're actually hearing, right? Does that make sense? Not just trying to lay down, this is what you need to hear, as opposed to, I want you to hear my heart, but I also want to make sure that I'm hearing yours as well and I'm meeting your needs as well.
Yeah, I think sometimes in those conversations, what happens is like I'll feel like I have the answer already, right? And the Lord has shown me the direction that we're going in. So why are you continuing to talk about this thing? I have the answer. And sometimes I have to take a step back and understand like the way that God ordains marriage and how he intends for it to function and work is as a collective and working together. And so if I'm going to come into a conversation with, I already have the answer, so hurry up and get going on what you need to say, because let's bring some rap to this and move forward. And you're coming in going, your thought process is broken. Let me hurry up and fix it. That's not going to lead to us making a whole lot of progress on what we want to actually achieve. And so I think a great reminder sometimes is in the midst of those conversations is to, again, press pause and tell you, honey, I hear what you're saying. I'm hearing your heart on this. I see why you feel this way. And I completely understand why you feel that way. Here's all that I was saying with regard to that is my feelings are around this. This is what I'm seeing. So help me to understand what our next steps can be together so that we're both moving forward in that thought process.
Yeah. And I'm more of a big picture, a big vision person. And I can see the finish line, very easily. This is where we need to be. We had this conversation about, if there's an opportunity to do a tightrope walk, across. I'm like, I see the end. I see the end. We're going to make it, and I get on the tightrope and then I'm like, oh, I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I don't like this middle messy period. I just want to get to the end. They're like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. And, in that same analogy, I'm the one who sees the tightrope. This guy. I get up on the tightrope and the first thing I do is look down.
When they tell you, don't look down.
That's me. I'm that guy. I look down immediately and I'm like, whoa, what are we doing way up here? Like, let's think this thing through. There has to be a better way to get towards the end because I'm very much about where we are right now. I understand and I know where we want to get to. But I get hyper focused on where we are right now, and so I'm much about having that 30,000 foot view, but never losing the focus on where my feet are right now. Like, what am I doing with my right now? So I think that we help to bring
rhythm
to what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think we flex into each other's areas to really help. Like, I'm a big picture person. So I know that I can't just say, here's the end goal. Here's where we're going to get to. I've got to flex into showing you some practical steps to say, hey, this is how we get there. Right. And then for you, I know that you're like, okay, now I see how we get there. You flex into, all right, what do I need to do today, tomorrow, and next week to get to that goal, and you're the person who is like the steady turtle. You're going to keep going. I'm the rabbit. I'm like, let's go. You're the steady turtle. So you really help me in those areas when I get exhausted and I'm like, is this really going to happen? I see the vision, but man, this whole middle part is really getting frustrated and long. You're that person that really helps me, once I flex into that area and show you, this is how we get there. I feel like we both meet each other in that area, and that's how we find success in the business ventures that we walk into.
Yeah, I again, just going back to what we talked about with having those open conversations about what each other is thinking and where we are, because it's not that I don't see the big picture, but I'm very concerned about the details that go into it, and if I feel like if I'm not coming to the table and bringing those details to your attention for us to work through together, then it comes off like it's like the Charlie Brown conversation.
Wah, 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 wah.
That's what I hear when you start talking, because it's like the conversation is very hyper focused for you on that finish line.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
we're nowhere near that finish line. It's not that I don't see the finish line. And it's not that I don't know where we want to go to, but I'm like, we're nowhere near there. Why are we even talking about that? Let's talk about what we can do today, like you just said, so that tomorrow we can do this, so that the following and everything lines up.
Okay. So I have confession. He knows this already, so it's not just the first time. But I used to call him a dream killer. I used to say, I'm the dreamer. He's the one dragging me down to earth. But we found that we complement each other in that, because there have been some crazy ideas that I've come up with that just, they weren't going to work. But we found out that they weren't going to work in planning through the details. Lou would ask me questions like, how are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's just being so negative. And like, gosh, can't you just run with me on this? And he's like, no, it needs to actually make sense. And that actually forced me to be a better business person, because then I would actually, before I brought the idea to him, I would, workshop some of this stuff, brainstorm a little bit deeper to really say, okay, I see how we can get there. I may not know all of the details, but I at least want to give him some details to satisfy his needs and how his brain operates. And in that, I have learned to appreciate how he thinks, how he works, because the truth is, if we were both visionaries, we'd be broke.
Yeah, and when, for those of you out there who, my wife is a creative, and so her mind goes to these things and these, big pictures and extravagant paintings of what life is going to look like. And for me, if it's important for you to know what your skill sets are, what are your giftings? So for me, one of my giftings is very high on my list of things that are gifts that have been given to me by God, is I'm an executor. And so I want to know, I was going to say, that's different from executioner. Okay, so she labeled me as the executioner of her dreams, but I wasn't there to kill dreams. But I'm there because I want to know, how do we execute the plan that's needed to get to the dream? And as an executor, I start thinking through, what are those things? And we talk about the high level thoughts. So you can be 30,000 foot view, you're up in the clouds and in the plains, or you're the boots on the ground. There has to be some rhythm to how those work together in order for them to not drive each other completely crazy and be able to accomplish things. Because I'm going to tell you what is really true about business. You could have the greatest idea in the world. Your idea could be awesome. But if you don't have a plan to execute it, to get to that ultimate ending, it doesn't matter. Your idea is awesome and it'll just remain that. It'll just be an idea. And you'll tell someone about it and say, hey, I thought about that once. You ever had that?
Yeah.
You're like, somebody comes out with something and you're like, thought of that 5 years ago. Like, I created Facebook. I thought about that. But, did you have the plan needed to execute that so that that could come to fruition? And that's really the essence of why you need that in your life. And so that's what brings about that rhythm, that healthy rhythm. Whether that's you and your spouse, we've been blessed that we have this inside of our marriage, inside of our relationship. But whoever it is that you're working with and you're in relationship with that brings that to the table for you, it might be your business partner.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not a spouse, but it's someone outside that, you feel comfortable and confident, brings that skill set to the table.
Yeah, you definitely need to make sure that you have different skill sets in your circle, because if everybody thinks like you, then you're not truly going to, what I'm looking for?
Yeah. You're not going to get the perspective.
The perspective. That's it. Yeah. That you really need. You have to be able to see from different angles. And I know at times it could feel like somebody's killing your dreams if they're just challenging you. But if you have an answer to that challenge, then your dream is not dead. So I think it's important to get different perspectives to really help you to refine yourself, to grow in those areas.
Yeah. And, even in those conversations, sometimes, what I've discovered is sometimes I'll ask you a question about something. Oh, I've got this great plan. I've got a great idea. And you give me the idea and I'm like, well, what about this?
Hmm.
And then in your frustration, you might be like, well,
Where we go again?
no. But the truth is that then I many times come back and go, well, have you considered doing this?
Yeah, that is true.
And it's because as the executor, I've thought about that and I'm asking you because I'm curious to know, are you thinking something different than me? So when you're like, I haven't even thought about that yet. Listen, I'm trying to tell you what the idea is, right? My idea is amazing. Shut up for 5 seconds and listen to it, man. And I'm like, oh, well, what about this? And you're like, huh, I don't know yet. And I'm like, well, I actually thought, what if we did this? And it's like, it all starts to come together. And that's because we need each other. Like we're not islands to ourselves. We need each other. And that support is big when you have people in your circle who can lend that to you. Yeah. That's just really important.
I think that was the biggest thing, the biggest hurdle or the biggest obstacle in our relationship and business is that I really didn't appreciate the challenge. And I think it had a lot to do with my own insecurities because I felt like the challenge to whatever I was saying was something against me. Like it was saying like, well, you're dumb. You didn't think this all the way through. That's a stupid idea. And it wasn't, oh, the idea is stupid. It was, you are stupid. It's not what you said, but that's how I translated it in my trauma brain and just said, oh, well, that just means I'm not really good enough at this. And maybe I'm not a good person. And maybe I'm just all these things where I was spiraling, emotionally saying, well, then that just means I'm not good enough, period. And really that was playing back to the message that I've been telling myself for years, I'm not good enough. So that little thing just played into it rather than me really understanding this is Lou's gifting. This is, he's really helping me to refine me. But until I really, worked on getting my own healing and then also worked on appreciating the gifts that are in you, that's when I started to say, oh, okay, now I get it. So going back to our backgrounds, I grew up where it was children are to be seen and not heard. Like we couldn't say anything. I wasn't allowed to argue. And not with my parents. Oh, no, forget it. But I wasn't even allowed to argue with my siblings. So I really didn't come into the marriage with the ability to debate or even express vocally what I was feeling or my ideas.
Yeah, for me, it was very different. I came from a family. I'm one of 6, and so I'm the youngest of that 6. So I had an opportunity to see a lot of debate take place at the table. Mm-hmm. And so, my father wasn't one to be challenged. Like he wasn't excited about being challenged by his children. But what he did instill in us was an ability to debate a point and be able to defend what your thought process was. That was really important to him for us to be able to do that as individuals. And so I got an opportunity to hear sides of different topics and see those debated and be able to develop it even within myself. And so many times, when I'd be at the table with my dad, being the youngest of 6, there was a point where all of my siblings had grown up and moved out of the house and it's just me that's left. And so many times I would sit there with my father and he would throw a point out there that was completely contrary to what I know that he actually did believe, just because he wanted to see me debate it. So he'd debate the other side of it. And then over time, he helped me to develop that as well, which is something that you definitely want to be careful of inside of your marriage.
Hi. They said Lou created a monster.
I definitely brought that skill set to our marriage.
Yeah. And in the beginning, it was not fun.
Yeah. And I'm, I was wondering, like, what's the matter with Sabrina? Why is she getting so upset? And, I'm like, I'm just debating. I don't even believe this thing. I'm just debating it just to see, what your thoughts are around it. And it would really annoy her. But over time, much like myself in growing up at the table, I learned how to do that effectively. And over time, Sabrina has become the master. The student has become the master. And so that, sometimes we'll do that. We'll have those kinds of conversations. But I think we always bring that back home to, what's really true. What do we really stand on here? What are those things we really do agree about?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get in harmony and talk about the things that we agree on in this episode.
Yeah. So I agree that it is very important for you to be at a place where you're having open discussions with the people that are in your life. And I'm going to speak specifically to our married couples that are out there listening. You have to have those real, authentic, open conversations with your spouse. And sometimes those may not feel awesome because you come from one background, the other person comes from a totally different background. And it can feel challenging to even have the conversation.
Yeah.
But it's so important to have. And if you need to, in those conversations, just pause for a second and tell that other person what it is that you really feel about them. We told you guys that that's our thing, that I'll take a pause, or Sabrina will take a pause and say, wait, hold on a second. This went in a different direction than I had anticipated. Hear my heart on this. I want you to hear my heart, because my heart is not to harm you. My heart is not to hurt you. I want you to hear where I'm really coming from, and that, it's okay that you don't necessarily agree with everything that I'm saying, but my goal is not to beat you up with my words and what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I agree. And having those tough conversations. And if your relationship is at a point where it just ends up in an argument, I would encourage you to invite a couple in that could be a support to you, or counseling. That has been a good thing for us, as we've had, and not just invite a couple in to, take sides. It has to be a neutral party. And we have some really great friends. We have great circles where you can get people that can really, give the different perspective and allow you to be able to have respectful conversations with each other. I think that was really helpful for us as well during some of those difficult conversations.
Yeah. And, I want to challenge people to do the difficult thing. Like, sometimes we categorize things as difficult that are really the easy road. And I, for one, think that we can sometimes mislabel what is hard and what is easy. And because of that, we sometimes just say, hey, I'm going to check out on this. I'm going to tap out on this and move on, versus taking what really is the hard road, which is, let's work through this.
Yeah.
And, with that, you can have times when you just feel like we're going like head to head constantly and battling through. And so here's a really hard activity to do. Whenever you're having one of those, stop that conversation about what you're talking about and come back to it later. But start talking about what are the things you appreciate about the other person.
Yeah.
Because you have not thought about that at all inside of the argument. Intense fellowship.
You're not thinking about how wonderful the person is across the table.
No.
That's
No.
true.
And if we take some time to actually reflect on that, think about that, and tell the other person our thoughts towards them about that, it changes the whole dynamic of the conversation.
It really does. It really does. And even when you're just focusing on, hey, let's focus on the things that we do agree on and table some of the things that we don't agree on for right now. I think that's also a great tool to use in the midst of intense fellowship.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said, and we call table talks these conversations that we're having. But Sabrina just hit a really key point, is that a part of having the table there is you can put something on the table and it's okay. You can move on from that and say, we'll pick that back up at another time.
Yeah.
It's okay to do that and start talking about the things that we do agree on.
Yeah. That's the harder one for me, because I want to address it right then. So
yeah.
So I've had to learn that it's okay to table some things. It does not have to be fixed right then.
Yeah. That's important, to say that, because people have different personalities, and I'm going to speak for the analytical thinkers out there. If you're an analytical thinker like me, now I can get down in the moment, but many times in the moment, I'm saying stuff that I really don't need to be saying because I don't mean them. I'm just saying it because it's what came up in our conversation, but it's not what's truly at the heart of what I mean. And so sometimes my mind is going and I'm thinking about things and I don't need to start talking yet because I haven't finished the processing part yet. And so Sabrina's like going like heavy, 90 miles an hour. And I'm like, I'm not ready to move forward into deeper conversation here because I'm still untangling what we were just talking about.
Right.
But so understanding the people that you're having those intense fellowships with may not be the same type of processor that you are.
Yeah, I think it's important to really understand how your spouse processes. That really helps you to have more grace with them when they're not processing the way you think they should. And that's probably a whole other episode.
That's a future episode to come where we'll address that.
That needs a little bit more.
We're going to need a little bit more time on that.
Yeah. But just really having an understanding of how that person processes and having grace for them in the middle of it and not just demanding your own way, I think it's very helpful.
For sure. And again, hitting on those things that we do agree on, having the right rhythm makes things move in a fashion that's supportive of getting to the ultimate end, that goal that you've set. So rhythm is everything. Rhythm's going to get you. The rhythm is really important. And, trying to get it all perfect and get the balance. Listen,
it doesn't work.
It doesn't. I don't know.
Grace.
Yeah. Grace is really important in that process because I don't know a couple that has everything in perfect balance at all times. Like, I don't know what that looks like. There are times when things just come up that require our attention. And how do we fit that in with everything else? Well, we can't keep the balance and do that, right?
No.
This came out of left field. If for those that like to juggle, if you think about that, you're juggling 3 balls and I throw the 4th ball in there, man, it takes an incredible amount of skill to be able to continue the juggling because it's a different type of juggle when that 4th ball comes in. And so in order to be able to keep all the balls in the air and keep the juggling going, that takes an intense amount of skill. And so when you think about that in terms of life, when those things come at you, listen, there's a rhythm to what I'm doing. There's a rhythm to keeping everything moving forward and in working order. And I can't just keep balanced. I can't just keep it the way that it was. There's a new thing that's entered into the equation.
Yeah. And on all of this, it is important to remember that in all of our hustle, that we pursue Yahweh, not my way.
Absolutely.
We hope today's episode gave you something real, something you can take with you to build stronger relationships, a thriving business, and a life filled with purpose. Remember, life isn't about juggling it all. It's about finding that rhythm, harmony, or that flow that works for you. If this message resonated with you, please don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe, share it with someone you think needs to hear it, or drop us a comment because your voice matters. Check out our website and keep up with us on social. Until next time, stay blessed, stay focused, and keep moving in your rhythm.